this was like a gorilla. The whole time I was looking at it. It's sparrows. They're like two sparrows that kind of making little kisses. What? Alrighty. It's the end of May and now the beginning of June, which means I'm doing a monthly wrap up. Now, I did not do a monthly wrap up for the month of April because I do have some plans coming up. On top of the books that I recorded on my Goodreads, I have like 7 other books, or going to be 7 books that I finished in the month of April or finished in the month of April. And I'm basing it around a video idea, which is, I guess it's not a surprise. I'm just trying to figure out how to make the video and explain myself well, because sometimes I feel like I don't explain myself well. Kind of like I'm doing right now. You'll definitely see what I mean when that video comes out. I'm working on it. It's just kind of a different format. I'm trying to figure out how to explain myself. Back to what I was saying. I do have my wrap up for the month of May. I read 5 books, almost 6, 5.5 books. Some of them are chunkers, so they did take me a little bit longer to get through. So let's just go ahead and get started because that's what we're here for. Now, the first book that I read for the month of May was A Taste for Love by Jennifer Yen. I did a full vlog on this and I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 3.75 stars out of 5. I did find it very entertaining and I did find this a quick read. I finished this in one day and yeah, I thought it was entertaining from start to finish. It had some interesting storylines. It was really cute. It was really fun to read. Next we have, of course, a Stephen King book. And I read The Dark Half. This did take me a while to get through. I started it on March 31st and finished it on the 12th of May. That's a long time for me, especially for Stephen King books because I tend to burn through them. And I did give this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. And it's not that I didn't enjoy this book, why it took me so long to read. It's just like, you know, sometimes, I'm sure a lot of you guys out there might get a little upset with me in saying this, but I do find Stephen King a little gratuitous with his writing. I am a huge Stephen King fan, obviously. But that doesn't mean I don't have like some minor criticisms or some general criticisms. Also, can I just say, this book randomly got spoiled for me when I was randomly on Reddit, and I'm gonna go to put like a little like skip here if you want to just skip past this if you are planning on reading this book and don't want any mild spoilers. I don't plan on spoiling this book obviously, but there might be some mild spoilers in here. So the basis of this book is there's an author named Thad Beaumont. He has experienced some like headaches and debilitating head problems when he was a child, and they perform exploratory surgery on him to help him, and come to find out he's got like a absorbed twin, or twin he absorbed in utero. And so they remove that, and then he grows up and leads a pretty normal life. He's an author, a professor, a writer, you know, typical Stephen King character. And as he's writing, he creates a pretty successful career and decides to have like a pseudo pen name. The pen name, or that, you know, how should I say? I'm just gonna say twin, because that's what it is. Comes back to, you know, seek his revenge and make sure that he continues writing under that pen name. So anyways, long story short, or long story long, I was on Reddit and I was reading a thread about like twins in utero, or like absorbing twins. And then someone literally was like, oh, like The Dark Half. And I was sitting there like, what? I hadn't gotten to that point in the book yet, and I hadn't actually made that connection. It seems like a pretty obvious connection in hindsight. I hadn't made it yet, and I was like, well, okay. But obviously there's a lot more exciting things that happen. There's a lot of very gory and vicious killings, as, you know, naturally it's a Stephen King book, and the ending was really good. And then finally, this cover made sense to me. I thought this was like a gorilla. The whole time I was looking at it. It's sparrows. They're like two sparrows that kind of making little kisses. Yeah, I thought it was a gorilla this whole time. Now that I look at it, it's pretty obvious it's birds. I just never really looked at it. I was like, ooh, cool, and just put it in my bookshelf. So anyways, I am actually working on this book, so this will probably be my June wrap-up if I finish it in June, which is Everything's Eventual, 14 Dark Tales. So far, so good. I have read, I think, about 4 of the stories in here, and some of them, oh my gosh, my mind's already twisted. So that's another Stephen King book I'm reading for this month, and I think I am going to hopefully soon move on to it. I'm kind of eager to get to it because I feel like that's the last book I want to read before I attempt the Dark Tower series, which will be my first time reading it. By the way, The Dark Half was the last Castle Rock story that I wanted to finish, or that I needed to finish. So we had a lot of similar characters in this, like Alan Pangborn and yeah, some other like minor characters you see. And he references like Cujo and stuff like that in that book, and other Castle Rock stories. So anyways, that's my little Stephen King bit. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, this next book I was really excited to read, and this did take me a second to get through. Actually, I read it pretty fast, but because it was really interesting, but I sat down and read this for like 8 hours at one point, and it is Chaos Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s by Tom O'Neill. I was really, really excited to read this. I picked it up off a book outlet, as the little marker down there shows, and I finally got around to reading it. Now, I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars, mainly because it was really, really interesting at times. It's very informationally dense, which is why I had like long sitting sessions with this book versus being able to like burn through other books like I'm able to. So yeah, there were some really compelling theories he was going down. Like definitely very interesting rabbit holes as far as Charles Manson. Why did he have the ability, or how did he gain the ability to manipulate minds on LSD? Like, where did he get that idea from? Is it possible that he was shielded from a lot of the times he should have just been like put away in jail for a lot longer than he was? Why wasn't he pursued more? Why wasn't he held behind bars longer? Is there like higher cover-ups going on around Charles Manson and the family? Like, they were surveying the ranch for quite some time, so the police force and the government should have really known what was going on, but yet they didn't. And there were definitely some seedy characters, not only around Charles Manson, but just the LaBianca and the Tate murders. It's also pretty interesting because Vince Bugliosi, who is the lead prosecutor in the Tate LaBianca murders, he had some holes in his whole helter-skelter theory. So, I mean, it's a lot to go over and just like trying to summarize this book in general. So all of that I found really interesting. My main point of contention was it was pretty in the weeds sometimes, and I guess that's the Secret History of the 60s part of the title. And because there's already so many people involved with this whole thing, it was hard for me to follow, because then he started adding on characters that I just kind of felt like weren't relevant, or like people and theories and history and facts that I was just kind of like, wait, why am I reading about the JFK assassination? Because I don't actually think that has much to do with this. Like, I get it, but I don't at the same time. It was a long read at some points that I was like, okay. Let's get back to Charles Manson, like what I was trying to read about. The next book I read, I actually listened to on Libby, which was The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I saw this was highly rated, and I do like some like interesting self-help books or interesting self-improvement books. This was definitely interesting. I just felt like it was a lot of it was very common sense. I thought something was gonna be revealed to me, that I was gonna be like, aha, that's how we make habits and how habits form. Maybe I've actually read enough about these topics, so it made more sense to me. Maybe this would be like new information to someone else, which is definitely a possibility. I just feel like for me personally, I at least was aware of or had read some of the stuff that was being presented in this book. The last book that I actually finished for the month of May was this book here, which is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is actually, believe it or not, my first Brandon Sanderson book. And I picked up this book as well as the sequel here, which is called Starsight from Book Outlet. So again, you can see the little marks on the bottom here. And I'm trying to get a little bit more into fantasy reading, so this seemed right up my alley. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I will say I definitely feel like this is setting up for a bigger story. I loved a lot of the characters in this book. Like, I loved Mbot, I loved the Doomslug, I loved Dispensa. I mean, and can I reiterate how much I loved Mbot? He was just like so quirky and sarcastic and still very robotic in a sense. So I really loved the introduction of that character and how he interacted with Spensa, who's kind of like, she has to be kind of hard and rugged to fight against this family perception that's been placed on her. I docked a star off because there were some times I put down the book and wasn't eager to pick it back up, which for me, that usually indicates it's not a 5. A 5 is a book that I can't put down or I'm like thinking about or really excited to read again. This one I'd kind of like sit down and revisit, sit down and revisit. So it took me a little bit longer to get through, but I did find the end very, very exciting. It had a lot of action sequences throughout this book, especially like I said at the end, and it was just a very enjoyable read. And I do plan on moving on to the second one, which is why I have this here. I will probably take a break though before I read this book. And then last but not least is actually, this is another book outlet find, I think, which is The Sixth Extinction, An Unnatural History by Elizabeth Kolbert. And I'm about halfway through there. I think I actually would enjoy this more if I was listening to it on audiobook, but I am reading it. It's very interesting, and it talks about different extinction events that have happened throughout history and more specific extinction events. Like the first chapter was about this super cute yellow frog, the frogs of El Val. And there was another chapter on Ammonites and Mastodons. So that's what I read up until this point. I'll probably finish this in the next couple of days or so. So I thought I'd just kind of throw this in here at the end, but I'm not really sure how I feel about this book yet because I obviously haven't finished it. So yeah, that's pretty much the reading that I have done for the month of May. I felt like I had a pretty good reading month. I didn't find anything too terrible or unenjoyable. I had a pretty good time. I had some good sized books in here as well. As always, I hope you guys are happy and healthy, and don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, share with friends and family, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.